If your profitability goes down the moment your company grows, then you have a scalability problem. In this video, I will not only explain the topic of business model scalability, I will also give you a step-by-step framework how to design the most scalable business model. Hi, I'm Felix. I work with over 100 companies developing new business models. And I know one thing for sure, coming up with a new business model idea is easy, but designing a business model that actually works and that is also scalable, that is extremely hard. We will go into all the details that makes a business model more scalable. The problem is that growth is expensive. Most companies, they fall into this trap. They try to grow, but what they don't see is that actually their profitability goes down. And the reason for that is that what they think are fixed costs, these fixed costs, they're actually step fixed costs. So they're also growing. And then they have high variable costs. Typically, especially for cost of acquiring customers, companies realize often too late that they actually have to pay more and more for acquiring a new customer until then it becomes no longer profitable to grow. And you see this, that the customer lifetime value, the CAV to CAC ratio, to the customer acquisition cost, this ratio is actually going down. So you make less money. Customer lifetime value is how much money you make over the lifetime with one customer, that in comparison what you spend to get this customer in the first place. So growth exposes weak scalability. So if your business model is not designed to scale, then revenue grows faster than the profits. And the result is, of course, declining margins. So what is really scalability? So one thing is their revenue growth is faster than your costs, right? Otherwise, you will lose all margins until you're no longer profitable. The next is that your margins are ideally expanding over time. So you actually become more profitable the moment you grow. And you grow almost exponential, right? Not forever, but you grow almost exponential at least for a specific amount of time. And your costs at the same time, they grow sublinear or just stepwise, but not in the same rate. So to really understand business model scalability, you have to think of it as actually two different things that have to come together. And this is what I think most people, when they talk about scalability, don't really understand. It's about internal scalability, how your business model is built, and then external scalability, how the market lets you grow. So you can think of it as a car and a road. The internal scalability, how your business model is designed, is your car. You can have a slow old car or you can have a fast car. But your fast car will not be that fast if the road is congested. That's why you need external scalability. You need a market that actually lets you grow, a business environment that lets you grow. So you need an open road and a fast car. You can also think of it as a matrix. On the one side, we have the internal scalability. On the other axis, we have the external scalability. And of course, what you want to have a business model that is scalable internally as well as externally. There are companies that don't have either of them. Think of a hairdresser. A hairdresser has a limited market. Of course, almost every person has hair, but then people don't walk that far or drive with the car to another city to go to a hairdresser. So they only have the people basically in their neighborhood as an audience. It's very limited. On the other side, the internal scalability. How's the business model designed of a typical barbershop or hairdresser? They can only grow the moment they open a new shop, right? They have to open a new shop. When they open a new shop, maybe they have to pay more rent because the new shop is maybe more expensive. It's maybe in a less good area, so they maybe have less good clients. So they become even maybe less profitable with the second shop, or at least the same. They have the same kind of margin than they had before because all the costs, all the fixed costs, they actually also grow. And then there are companies that are really great, right? And this is the companies we want to talk about today. High scalability on the internal axis and high scalability on the external axis. So let's start with internal scalability. So this is your configuration of your business model. So the key question here is the business model designed in a way that you can grow without proportional increases in cost? There are businesses that have very high variable costs. Think of your next grocery shop. When you leave there $100 or 100 euros, not all of that money stays with the grocery shop. A lot of money goes actually to all the producers of these goods, right? So they have quite high variable costs. Typically, margins in these industries are very, very low. On the other side, when we think about automation, software, and algorithm standardization, all these things that drive profitability and they lower the variable cost. So you have high scalability because your variable costs are very low. And then the next thing is, how do your fixed costs develop? I said it in the beginning, we think typically of fixed costs of the costs they're not changing, right? We have our office, we have our employees. No matter if we sell one product or 1 million products, typically we have almost the same. But in reality, in a low scalable business model, these fixed costs, they also grow. So as I said before with the hairdresser, the moment they want to grow, their fixed costs, they also go up step by step. A highly scalable business model, these fixed costs, they can also go up, right? Think of Google in the beginning, they had a big campus, they had all these employees, but then later they started different offices in different countries. So of course, every now and then, their fixed costs will also go up the moment the company reaches a specific threshold, right? But typically they don't grow just immediately. And then we have research leverage. A lot of scalable business models like Uber, Airbnb, they actually leverage other resources. And this is a huge advantage because Uber, for example, they don't own the cars, Airbnb, they don't own the apartments, and this lowers all your overhead. And in comparison, WeWork, this co-working company that has also had huge valuation one time when it was scaling very fast, it was running into this trap that they had all these rental contracts, all these leases. So you can see that a business model like WeWork, the way it was designed, is not as scalable as, for example, Airbnb. Then we have the revenue model. So this is how you make money. And there's kind of the low scalable classic revenue model where you have one-off transactions, right? You sell something one time, the deal is done, you get money, that's it. You have cost plus pricing. In the past, it was very common that you would look at a product, let's say you build a car and it costs you maybe 10,000 euros to produce and then you sell it for 20,000 euros. So you have a margin on the product, but that's a very low scalable business model. We will see in a moment what is much better. Static pricing. So no matter what the client need is and the willingness to pay of the client, maybe someone would spend 100 euros, but you only sell the product for 10 euros, you will only get the 10 euros, right? It's static pricing. And then long sales cycles. This is also not very scalable. We see this a lot in B2B and also business to government. It can take 6, 12, 18 months or longer until you actually have the money on your bank account. And of course, if you get the money very late from the first maybe contact until it's paid, then of course you cannot scale that fast because you cannot reinvest that money in your growth. On the other side, what you have when you look at highly scalable business models, you have typically recurring revenues. Not every company has that, right? There are different business models, but recurring revenues, everyone wants to be Netflix. And for a reason, because you need to earn a lot of money over time with a customer. That's the customer lifetime value. The bigger your customer lifetime value is, the more you can spend on acquiring customers. We had this in the beginning of cost of acquiring customers. So you can spend more. So this gives you way more options to grow faster and stay profitable. The next thing is value-based pricing. So that means you're not just basically adding some margin to your costs. It's more like, okay, what value do we create? And especially in B2B, when you can promise that you can save money for a client, let's say you can help them save $10 million a year, then their willingness to pay is very high. Dynamic pricing. Uber does this, for example. The moment there is a concert and everyone wants to go home or there is rain, then the prices go up, right, by a lot because the willingness to pay just changed dramatically. It doesn't work for every business model, but if it works, it makes it more scalable. Short sales cycles in comparison to long sales cycles. Of course, you have your money easier, maybe even prepaid, right? People pay you before you deliver something. Then you can invest that into your growth. So how do we actually grow? Revenue should grow without matching marketing spend. Think of Skype in the early days or WhatsApp when it was started, right? It was useful to recommend it to your friend because then you can have a phone call for free, right? You could Skype, you have a video call with someone in another country for free. So of course I would send a message or an email at the time to a friend like, hey, you should download Skype. Next one is login. It's very difficult to grow when you also lose customers at the same time. This is called churn. If your churn is high, then you have to invest way more to get more and more customers. Think of it as a bucket with holes. You have to pour in so much water because all the water is also flowing out. So the first thing actually is to create switching costs. You need high retention because they are happy and it's expensive for them and difficult for them to leave. And this improves a lot your scalability. Now we come to the external scalability. So this was all the business model design. You have to think about this when you design your business model. And by the way, if you want to have these slides that I'm showing you, you can find a link in the description of this video to these slides. You can just download them and use them for your own preparation. Okay, let's come to external scalability. This is your business model environment. The question is, does your environment allow you to grow big? And the first and probably most important question is your market size and your market growth. Do you have a big market? Do you have a growing market? It's much easier to grow in a big market and in a big and growing market when you want to grow big than it is in a small market or even shrinking or stagnating market. Think of your market like this matrix. Of course, you want to be in the growing and big corner. Shrinking markets are very dangerous. Stagnating markets are also not great. So this is something you definitely need to consider. The next one is market constraints. Because on paper, your market might look big, but in reality, there are a lot of constraints. Sometimes there's regulation. Sometimes there are language barriers, local standards, tariffs. Think of the EU. The EU is a gigantic market. It's big. It's 450 million people, 22 trillion in GDP. It's a huge market. But for a startup in Europe, it's much harder to scale than it is for an American startup to scale through the United States. So bringing this all together, you want to have the Ferrari on the open road. You want to have the scalable business model. This is how you design it, but you also want to target a market that allows you to grow big. Think of Google when they did their IPO in 2004. It was already a big company, right? It was a huge company and it was a profitable company. But they were growing so much more since then in the last 20 years, but not only in absolute numbers. Of course, in absolute numbers, this is insane, but also in relative numbers. Their profitability is actually today 2 times higher than it was during their IPO in 2004. So this is a highly scalable business model. Most companies are somewhere in the middle, right? But you should always work on these 2 dimensions, on these 2 axes to become more scalable. Follow me to learn more about psychology of innovation and business model design. And you can find all these slides in the description. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.